What happens when your father passes away after a long illness? You are sitting at his bedside holding his hand in his final moments, grieving and broken. And while you are doing that, your own uncle is at the bank, forging your father's signature, draining every single account and transferring the entire inheritance into his own name. He thought grief would make me weak. He thought tears would blind me. He forgot that my father, the smartest man I ever knew, had already prepared for exactly this moment and left me everything I needed to bring his own brother to his knees in a courtroom. My father was the strongest man I have ever known. He built everything from nothing. He worked double shifts for 15 years straight so that I could go to college debt-free. He never complained. He never asked for anything in return. He just loved me quietly and completely, the way only a father can. When he was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, our world changed overnight. I moved back home immediately. I left my job, my apartment, my entire life in another city, and I came home to take care of him. For 2 years, I was his nurse, his driver, his cook, and his best friend. We watched old movies together. We talked about everything we had never said before. Those 2 years, as painful as they were, became the most precious time of my entire life. My Uncle Darren visited occasionally. He was my father's younger brother. He always had an excuse for why he couldn't stay long, why he couldn't help more, why life was keeping him busy. My father never complained about it. He just smiled and said that everyone handles difficult things differently. I should have paid more attention to the way Darren's eyes moved around the house during those visits, the way he asked quiet questions about accounts, about the will, about what my father had planned. I thought he was just being family. I was wrong. My father passed on a Tuesday morning in March. I was holding his hand. The room was quiet. Outside the window, the sun was just coming up. I didn't leave the hospital for 6 hours. The funeral was 4 days later. Darren gave a speech. He cried. He hugged me and told me I was strong and that my father would be proud of me. 3 days after the funeral, I went to my father's bank to begin the process of transferring his accounts into the estate. I had the death certificate. I had the will. I had every document my father's lawyer had prepared. The bank manager looked at her screen for a long time before she looked back up at me. She told me very carefully that the primary accounts had already been closed. I asked her what she meant. She told me that 2 days before my father passed away, someone had come into the branch with power of attorney documents and withdrawn everything. Every single account. Over $400,000 in total savings, investments, and a life insurance disbursement that had been deposited just weeks earlier. The name on the power of attorney documents was Darren. I sat in that bank chair for a very long time without moving. My father had been unconscious in a hospital bed 2 days before he passed. He had not signed anything. He had not spoken to anyone outside of me and his medical team. He had certainly not granted anyone power of attorney. The documents were forged. I called my father's lawyer the same afternoon. He was stunned. He told me that he had prepared a proper will months earlier, and that Darren had absolutely no legal claim to anything. The power of attorney documents Darren had used were not prepared by his office and had not been witnessed or notarized through any legitimate channel. I then called the bank's fraud department directly and filed a formal complaint. That evening, I called Darren. He answered on the second ring, cheerful and relaxed. I told him what I had found out. There was a long pause. Then he told me that our father had changed his mind in his final weeks, that he had wanted Darren to manage the money and distribute it fairly, and that I should trust the family process. I told him I would be speaking to a lawyer in the morning. He told me I was being emotional and that grief was making me irrational. I hung up. That night I did not sleep. I sat at my father's desk in his study, surrounded by his things, and I made a list of every single piece of evidence I had, every date, every conversation, every document. My father had always told me that when someone tries to take something from you, the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm and stay organized. I stayed calm. I got organized. My lawyer was experienced in estate fraud, and she was excellent. Within the first week, she had already identified 3 major problems with Darren's forged documents. First, the notary stamp on the power of attorney was from a notary who had retired 2 years earlier and whose license had not been active at the time the document was supposedly signed. Second, the signature on the document did not match any verified sample of my father's signature from the past 3 years. A handwriting expert confirmed this within days. Third, security footage from the bank showed Darren arriving alone, without my father, carrying documents in a folder. My father had not been to that branch in over 8 months due to his illness. The case was building itself. But Darren was not giving up easily. He hired a lawyer of his own. His lawyer sent letters claiming that my father had verbally communicated his wishes to Darren during private conversations, that the power of attorney was legitimate, and that I was a grieving child trying to contest a valid legal document. My lawyer responded to every letter within 24 hours. Meanwhile, I found something extraordinary in my father's desk drawer. A sealed envelope with my name written on it in my father's handwriting. Inside was a 2-page handwritten letter dated 4 months before his passing. In it, my father explained that he had become suspicious of Darren's questions and behavior during visits. He wrote that he had spoken to his lawyer and updated his will. He also wrote that if anything seemed wrong after he was gone, I should look carefully at everything and trust the people he had trusted professionally. He had known. He had protected me even from beyond that hospital room. The case went to civil court 7 months after my father passed. Darren walked in looking confident. He was dressed well. His lawyer was experienced. He had clearly expected this to be a difficult but winnable fight. What he had not expected was the handwriting expert, the retired notary confirmation, the bank security footage, my father's personal letter, and 3 witnesses including the bank manager, my father's primary care physician who confirmed he had been unresponsive 2 days before his death, and my father's lawyer who testified about the legitimate will that had been prepared months earlier. One by one, every piece of Darren's story collapsed. His lawyer tried to redirect. He tried to argue that the handwritten letter was not legally binding. The judge noted that it was not being presented as a legal document. It was being presented as evidence of intent and context, and it was being admitted. Darren took the stand himself at one point. He looked smaller up there than I had ever seen him look. His confident expression had completely disappeared by the time the cross-examination began. My lawyer asked him one simple question. She asked him to explain how he had obtained the signature of a man who his own family members, 3 nurses, and his attending physician had confirmed was unconscious at the time the document was allegedly signed. He had no answer. The judge ruled in my favor completely. The power of attorney documents were declared fraudulent. The bank was ordered to cooperate fully with recovery efforts. Darren was ordered to return every cent, including interest and legal fees. He was also referred to the district attorney's office for criminal fraud charges. I stood outside that courthouse in the afternoon sun, and I thought about my father, about how he had worked every single one of those years to build something for me, about how even when he was sick and exhausted and running out of time, he had sat down and written me a letter because he was still trying to protect me. Darren called me once after the verdict. He said he was sorry. He said the debt had gotten out of control and he had panicked and made a terrible decision. I told him I forgave him for my own peace, but that forgiveness did not mean no consequences. I have not spoken to him since. The money was recovered almost entirely. I used a portion of it to set up a small scholarship at my father's old high school in his name. Every year, a student who is the first in their family to attend college receives it. My father built everything from nothing. Now a piece of what he built will help someone else do the same. Outro hook. If this story moved you even slightly, subscribe to this channel right now because every single story here is about real people who refuse to stay down. Hit that follow button so you never miss an upload, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in that courtroom. Story 31 is coming, and I promise you, it is even more unbelievable than this one.